Hi, my name is Daniela, and I'm the co-founder of DNA Detailing. Our company provides 3D rebar detailing. So what that means is we create super detailed 3D rebar models, and from that, we extract shop drawings and bar lists, and we provide field support for our clients. We started our business back in 2014, and we have been a remote business from day one. We currently have one employee, and we all live in different states. I am in California, Alyssa is in Oregon, and our employee is in Colorado. Our projects are scattered throughout the entire United States, so we have a lot of experience in remote businesses and managing a remote team.
My name is Alyssa Shore. I'm Daniela's business partner and co-founder of DNA Detailing. Thank you for joining us. So why start a business? For us, it was about career independence. We wanted a flexible schedule, location autonomy, a supportive team, and freedom to innovate that is not hindered by a corporate structure. This has required a lot of hard work, which we expected, but it has also allowed us to live a very different lifestyle for the past 6 years, and I don't think that either of us would go back and change it for anything. As we go through this presentation, I just have a couple helpful acronyms that I wanted to run through really quick, just to keep in mind as you're listening to us. We have Secretary of State / Department of State, employer identification number, limited liability company, unemployment insurance, a 1099, and work from home. The framework of your new business is very important. In terms of structure, you need to think about your long-term vision. Will you have employees? Will it always just be you? Will you hire contractors? Although each person should seek their own legal advice, we do recommend that you form some type of company, because if you don't, you'll be paying taxes under your own social security number, and some of your assets may not be protected. As an LLC, an owner can take a distribution for salary instead of running payroll. So that's an option if you haven't yet hired employees, and then you can always switch over to payroll if you need to when you hire. These different types of business structures have different tax implications that you should definitely consider in the long run. In terms of registering your business, most Secretary of State websites will have a new business checklist or at least a list of forms to complete, but make sure you do your due diligence so that you get everything filed. Taxes are different at the state level in different states. So that is another thing that you need to keep your eye out for. It's difficult because you may feel like you become an expert in one state and then you hire and you have a whole new set of rules to learn. Do keep in mind that if you're using your social security number to pay taxes, then you don't actually need to file for an employer identification number. But if you do ever plan to hire or you ever want to run payroll, you do need the EIN number. Address is a little tricky with a remote business. You can use your home address for sure, but you may want to consider how this will affect you if you rent and you move often, or if there's multiple business owners. A mailbox service can really be worth the extra fees because it can save you time and it builds in a little flexibility and you can forward mail to any address. In terms of insurance, this will look a little different than your typical brick and mortar business. One thing you'll have to consider is having a house guest over, and they could potentially trip on your computer cord and injure themselves. And then your business is open to a different type of liability. On the flip side, as a remote company, you may be able to negotiate your way out of other types of insurance. Some subcontractors that are on site or operating machinery have specific insurance required by contracts. And if you're just providing a digital product, then a lot of times you can negotiate out of this or become exempt.
Running your own business can get overwhelming really quickly. So make sure that you set up your support systems early on. First off, you want to get a bank. Shop around, find a bank that has services specifically for small businesses. Having that relationship and that history with the bank could make a really big difference down the line if you ever need access to capital. Taxes are crazy. Don't try to learn every little intricacy of the tax law, especially in the United States. Find yourself a tax accountant. Make sure it's somebody that is accessible, that you can ask questions to. You might have to shop around before you find the right fit for you. Accounting software is great. You can try to keep track of everything in an Excel spreadsheet, but it's going to be more work down the line. So it might make sense to splurge a little bit and and get something like QuickBooks where you can enter all of your information, you can sync all of your accounts, and later down the line, whenever you need to run a financial report, it's just one click away. A retirement account may look different when you start your business. If you're not running payroll, you won't have access to a 401k, but talk to your bank. You can easily set up an IRA and probably a SEP IRA, which is a great option for putting away whatever money you can while you're starting your business. Mentors are important. SCORE is a great resource, even if it's just to bounce ideas off of somebody who has more experience. Definitely check that out and use whatever resource you can find in your local area. Hiring for a remote team is definitely going to give you a lot of flexibility, but there are still a few things to watch out for. For starters, you will have to register in each state that you hire. So if you are hiring in a different state than where you were originally registered, you will have to register as a foreign entity with that Department of State. There also might be taxes and fees that you have to pay in that particular state to employ somebody there. Your employee handbook will need to have appendices for each state. And when it comes to categorizing your employee, whether they be contractors, exempt employees, or non-exempt employees, is super important. It's probably best to consult with a lawyer on this to make sure that you don't get this wrong. This is going to determine how you pay your employee, as well as which labor laws apply to them, including overtime. And that is not something that you want to mess with, at least in the United States, and definitely in places like California. You're going to need a lot of tools to run your remote business. So for starters, get some cloud storage that makes sense for you. Ask yourself, do you need to access files offline? Will you need to have files locally? Will you ever have more than one person trying to access the same file? As a business owner, you will have hundreds of tasks, so make sure you're using some sort of software to keep track of those, whether it be Asana or Basecamp or something like that. Tracking your time at the beginning is really difficult, so just find an app that you actually use. Maybe that means it needs to be on your phone, maybe it's attached to your task management software. Just make sure that you find something that works for you. Communication is obviously key to a remote team. So ask yourself again what you need. Do you need to screen share? Do you need to be able to do video calls easily? The main thing here is also ease of use. You want to make sure that it's very easy for team members to shoot each other a message or to ask a question. So shop around and make sure you find something that feels right for you.
So those of you that have been working from home since the pandemic know that work from home culture shock is a real thing. You get lonely. Nobody is stopping by your desk. You're not popping into the break room for donuts that someone brought in. There's no water cooler chat. And you can feel a little bit isolated, and that can eventually affect your productivity. You see less inside jokes and less person-to-person bonding. So what are the solutions to this? Number one tip, video chat. Production meetings should be held over video chat so you guys can see each other's faces. And you might need to do production meetings more often than you would in an office environment. You can't just look over to your business mate's desk and say, hey, what are you working on? Or, would you mind helping me after lunch? So it's really important to open up those channels for a remote team to make sure that we're supporting each other the best we can. Performance reviews are also crucial, as anyone can tell you, but I think with a remote team, it's even more important to do them on a regular basis. So rather than yearly, we've been finding that 6-month reviews work really well, and then just scheduling sort of mini reviews as needed. We also did sort of an expanded review system during the first 3 months of training after we hired, which were basically more of a weekly structure to really make sure that that person wasn't feeling like they got left between the cracks. Video work sessions are really great. We make sure that we schedule a couple of these every week. And basically, it just consists of everyone turning on their webcam and working on their own tasks. But we can still have a little chit chat. You ask those little questions like, hey, I forgot how to do this. Do you remember? But it creates a little bit more of a social environment. Daily check-ins are also very important. I think as a business owner, checking in with your employees to make sure that they don't have questions or that they're not spinning their wheels definitely is crucial. But even just for, some office-to-office communication, I could email Daniela to let her know something or ask her a quick question. But instead, I oftentimes will just turn on that video camera and ask her the question. And then, we'll sort of continue about our work while leaving the webcam on. And it just gives a little bit of a sense of camaraderie that, we otherwise wouldn't have. That last slide segues nicely into the topic of culture. How do you build culture when all you have is a webcam? As we know, working from home isn't first nature to everyone. I think it can take months. Even for us, when we started our company, it took months for it to feel like a normal thing. So how did we combat that? We started planning retreats, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but doing something on maybe a yearly or a semi-yearly basis where people can look forward to spending time with each other and spending time with each other in a non-work environment where the focus is on relationships, having fun. I think that's really important, and it can really pull you through some of your more rough deadlines or, your patches of work where you feel like things have gotten monotonous. We also have implemented virtual happy hours, and we just schedule them spontaneously. It also helps us to celebrate victories and deadlines, whether they're large or small. But I think it's really nice because it kind of takes the place of when everyone's packing up at 5 o'clock, leaving the office and saying, hey, do you want to go grab some appetizers or, hit the gym together or whatever it is. You're just providing a place for people to sort of kick back and have some silly conversation. And again, that is, work isn't the focus of that meeting. And so it really gives people a chance to relax and build those relationships. Flexible schedules are so important. It is one of the main motivating factors that we created our business the way that we did. We know that people have lives, they want to travel, they want to see their families, or they just want to run errands on a Wednesday when the stores aren't crazy busy. So laying the ground rules is important because, you can define the times that employees must be present all at once and rules that you need to have followed, and then you leave the rest up to them. So for example, you might say like, hey, it's okay to take a long lunch Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have stuff scheduled and it's all hands on deck. It's much harder to introduce schedule restrictions after the fact. So I definitely recommend having those in place when you bring your employees on board. But having the rules really clearly defined gives people the individual freedom to feel in control, but then they also are meeting the needs of the business. The next thing I want to mention is developing a value system where people support one another, not just as coworkers, but as people. I think it's really important to recognize that, everyone needs to be away from work, whether it's for family leave or a mental health day, or, maybe you want to take a mini sabbatical and travel the world. I think that a remote company is set up in such a way that we are more nimble. And we have those resources already in place to shuffle work around and contact one another over great distances. So, if someone isn't just sitting in the desk next to you, we still have that connection and we still know what's going on. So I think that's where we have a leg up over corporate structures. And I think ultimately it's a more attractive job for employees because they have that flexibility. And then, for employers, you feel good about giving your employees that kind of freedom, but also knowing that it's not going to, hinder your productivity and your production. I want to introduce this next section by talking a little bit about the gap that we have noticed in remote business versus traditional brick and mortar type businesses. We sometimes lack the resources of a traditional brick and mortar structure. And I have an example about that. I'm a business owner living in Oregon, and I have an employee that lives in Denver, Colorado. And if I were to have a question about having an employee in Colorado, I can't just walk into the Denver Chamber of Commerce and seek resources. I could check my own Chamber of Commerce here in Oregon, but chances are they're not really set up to connect me as a remote business to the resources that would help me. So it can be tricky, and it's definitely not intentional. There just tend to be less resources, or at least a less clear path for remote businesses to access the resources. The next thing that I want to make you aware of is the concept of foreign businesses. And this does not refer to businesses outside the country. It actually refers to when a business is registered in one state, but wants to either conduct business or hire an employee in another state. So that second or third or fourth state considers the business to be a foreign entity. This can be a little trickier because it's not as commonplace to register across state lines or to hire employees in multiple states. So the resources for that also tend to be a little bit buried. For example, a Secretary of State website is always going to link to the home state forms. And sometimes you have to do a little digging to find that equivalent form for a foreign business. Another thing to be aware of is that other states may require info from your home state if you are applying to do some sort of foreign business action in a new state. So, for example, if I wanted to do something in New York as a foreign business entity, they may require a certificate of good standing from my home state of California. So now I have to take into account that I have extra time that I need to either fax or snail mail and obtain this form and then forward that to New York. So it's definitely something to be aware of as a remote business owner, that processes are often going to take, several weeks to maybe even a couple months longer just because of the extra red tape that you have to go through. Lastly, I want to give one more example of how remote businesses encounter more red tape than you may expect, and this would be related to a WBE certification. WBE is a women's business enterprise, and the application is definitely more complicated if you're using a home address. Again, these things were developed in a time where remote businesses weren't really a concept. And so the system itself doesn't recognize that we don't have a business lease or a business mortgage. And it's sort of giving us like a does not compute when we say yes, we all work out of our homes and we have 3 different addresses. So that's another situation where our application was held up for several months because we were going back and forth with some extra efforts to prove that yes, we are a business. No, we don't have a central office. Yes, we work at home. These certifications, such as a WBE, a DBE, or an MBE, a minority business enterprise, they were traditionally set up to support marginalized groups in business, but the applications themselves seem to be exclusionary against remote structures, which is a little bit frustrating. So that is another situation where we have encountered extra difficulty simply because of our business structure.
Running a remote business is not easy. There's a lot of work. There will be a lot of obstacles, but the technology that we have now is lowering the barrier to entry. What I mean by that is there is less upfront cost than leasing an office. There are less experts in these new technologies that are coming out. And it specifically gives a lot of women the opportunity to step in and to lead in their field, as opposed to what the construction industry looked like 20 years ago. It's possible to build this more nimble business model where you can choose your own adventure. So sometimes that means working your butt off because you want to make extra money that year, or you want the prestige of finishing a really cool project. And there are other times when you get to sit back and prioritize something else. For me, having this business for the last 6 years has allowed me to mold my life into what I want in that moment or what I need in that moment. And we are both really grateful that we have been able to build this company and this career that we can be proud of, and at the same time have not put our lives on hold by any means in order to build this company. Again, it's not easy, but for us, it has absolutely been worth it.